Hello students, welcome back. I hope you all are doing well at your home. So let us start with a very interesting chapter, the model millionaire. Hergy Erskine was a wonderfully good-looking man with crisp brown hair, sharp features and grey eyes. So how did Hergy Erskine look, students? He was a very good-looking man with a crisp brown hair. What do we mean by crisp? It means kadak. Brown hair, sharp features and grey eyes. He was popular among men and women, but he was not very clever. So this man was so now the narrator is telling that he was not very clever man, but he looked very handsome. So now the narrator is giving a description about Hergy Erskine, that he was a very handsome man, but he was not very clever. He was kind to everyone, but he was a kind person to everyone. He was not good at working and earning enough money. He had tried everything, although his father had left him a sword and history books, and his aunt had allowed him to live on £200 a year. So his aunt used to give him £200 a year. His aunt used to give him some amount of money, and there were certain history books that his father left behind him. He tried selling tea and wine, but in the end he failed and remained. So the narrator states that he had no extra skills to earn money, and in the end he remained poor because he had no extra skills to work and to go and earn. To make matters worse, he was in love. So now, to make matters worse, which means that he was in love with someone else, and the girl he loved was Laura Martin, the daughter of a retired colonel. Laura also adored him. What do we mean by adored here, students? Also liked him. So Laura also liked Erskine, and the two of them could easily make the most handsome couple in London. So now the narrator is saying that they both could have simply, easily made the most handsome couple in London, but what happened? They had no money. The colonel was very fond of Haig, but he would not allow them to get married. So the father of Laura is not allowing Laura to get married to Haig. Why? Because Haig is poor. Come to me, my boy, when you have got £10,000 of your own. So now Laura's father is telling that if you have £10,000, then only come and ask my daughter to get married to you, and then we shall see. He used to say. Haig felt very sad, and only Laura could comfort him. One morning, as he was on his way to Holland Park, where the Mertons live, Haig dropped in to see his great friend Alan Trevor. So now Haig has come to see his great best friend Alan Trevor. Trevor was a painter. So Trevor was a painter, and he was a strange, rough fellow with a freckled face. So what do we mean by freckle here, students? Freckle means that his face had some kind of wrinkles and some spots, and he was a very strange, rough fellow, and a red raided beard, and he had a red raided beard around his face. However, he was a great artist, and many people bought his painting, and he was a great artist, and people used to buy his paintings. Trevor had always liked Haig for his cheerful and reckless ways. When Haig came into the store, he found Trevor putting the finishing touch to a wonderful life-sized picture of a begged man. So when Haig came inside the studio, he found Trevor, his best friend, finishing up a very life-sized picture that he made. It was a portrait of a beggar man. The beggar himself was standing on a raised platform. So the beggar was standing on a raised platform in the corner of the studio, and Trevor made a life-sized portrait of this man. He was an old man, bent and wrinkled with a pitiful face. So the beggar looked very pitiful, very sad, because he was a beggar, he had no money. Over his shoulders hung a corpse brown coat. So what do we mean by corpse, students? It means dead. It means very shabby brown coat, because he was a beggar. So he had a very shabby coat on his shoulder, all tattered and torn. The coat was tattered and torn. His boots were patched, and with one hand he leaned on a rough stick, while the other held out an old hat for money. And as you can see in this picture also, students, that the beggar was holding a stick in one of his hand, and in the other hand he was holding a hat. What an amazing model, whispered Haig as he shook hands with his friend. An amazing model, shouted Trevor at the top of his voice. I should think so. You cannot meet a beggar like him every day. So now Trevor is saying that, of course, he is an amazing model. You cannot find beggar every day. Of course, he is an amazing model. Poor old chap, said Haig. How miserable he looks. Certainly, replied Trevor. Trevor replied, certainly the beggar had a miserable life because he is poor. Of course, certainly. You can't expect a beggar to be happy, can you? So now Trevor is saying, can you expect a beggar to be happy? How can you expect that? Of course, he is going to be sad and miserable. How much does a model get for sitting? Asked Haig as he sat on the sofa. So now Haig sat on the sofa and he is asking that how much is he getting paid? A shilling an hour. So what do we mean by shilling here, students? Which means a penny, a very small amount for an hour. And how much do you get for your painting, Alan? So now Haig is asking, how much do you get for your painting? Oh, for this I get 2,000 pounds. So now Haig is exclaiming that you get 2,000 pounds for this painting? Guineas. Painters, poets and physicians always get guineas. He is saying that I am not getting pounds but guineas, like 2,000 guineas I am getting. Well, I think the model must have a share, added Haig, laughing. They work quite as hard as you do. So now Haig is telling his friend that the beggar deserve a raise, deserve more money than just a shilling. Nonsense, nonsense, why? Look at the trouble of laying on the painting alone and standing all day long at one's ease. It is all very well, Haig, for you to talk, but I tell you now, it is very hard for artists. I am very busy. You please keep quiet. So now Trevor is putting his side and he is saying that it is very hard for painters to paint and standing for such long hours, and we also do hard work. So of course we deserve much more than the beggar who are just lying there and just standing like a statue. So we deserve much more than them. After some time, the servant came in and told Trevor that the frame maker wanted to speak to him. Don't go, Haig, he said as he went out. So after some time, the servant came inside and informed that the frame maker wanted to speak to Trevor. Don't go, Haig. So Trevor is saying that don't go there. I will be back in a moment. The old man took advantage of Trevor's absence to rest for a moment on a wooden bench that was behind him. So when Trevor was outside, the beggar sat near Haig. He looked so forlorn. So now the beggar was looking very sad and wretched that Haig could not help pitying him and held in his pocket, see what money he had. All Haig could find was a sovereign and some copper. So now Haig is checking his pocket so that he can give something to the beggar, and he actually found some sovereign and some copper coins. So now he is going to give it. Poor old fellow, he thought to himself. So now Haig is thinking to himself that he is a poor old fellow. I should give these coppers to this beggar. He wanted it more than I do. And now Haig is thinking that this beggar wants these coins more than I do, so I should give it to him. He walked across the studio and slipped the sovereign into the beggar's hand. So he gave some sovereign to the beggar. The old man startled and a faint smile flitted across his withered lips. Thank you, sir, he said. Thank you. So now the beggar is thanking Haig that thank you for all the coins, all the sovereign, and thank you for helping me. Then Trevor arrived and Haig left the studio. And as soon as Trevor arrived in the studio, Haig left the studio blushing a little at what he had done. So now Haig is very happy that he has actually helped the beggar. He spent the day with Laura, got a little scolding for his ways. So he got a little scolding from Laura because Haig was already poor and he gave the sovereign to the other beggar. He spent the day with Laura, got a little scolding for his generosity and had to walk home. So Laura scolded him that why did you give the sovereign to the beggar when you needed sovereign more than him, because Haig was also poor. So now Laura scolded him a little. That night he strolled in the Pilates club at about 11 o'clock and found Trevor sitting by himself smoking and drinking. So that evening, that night, Haig met Trevor again. He was smoking and drinking in the club. Well, Alan, did you get the painting finished? All right. So now Haig is asking Trevor, did you get the painting finished? He asked as he lit his cigarette. Finished and framed, my boy, answered Trevor. By the way, that old model seemed to have taken an interest in you. So now Trevor is telling Haig that old model, that beggar, seemed to have taken some interest in you because he was asking me about your address. I had to tell him all about you, who you are, where you live, what your income is, and what your future will be. So the beggar was asking about Haig to Trevor, and Trevor had to answer every question that the beggar was asking about Haig. My dear Alan, cried Haig, I shall probably find him waiting for me when I go home. But of course, you are only joking. Poor old fellow. I wish I could do something for him. So now Haig is thinking that I should have done something more for him, but I am very happy that I helped him. I think it is dreadful that anyone should be so poor. I have got heaps of clothes at home. Do you think he would care of any of them? So now Haig is telling Trevor that should I give some of my old clothes to this beggar? What do you think about it? So this brings us to the end of the chapter, students. I hope you learnt a very important lesson of your life. Thank you.